Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, thank you, sir, for this exclusive interview. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I would like to start here. In 2 weeks' time, you have been, for 1 year, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and let me be among the first to congratulate you on your first year. It has been a mixed year. You had some successes. Climate change is going the right way in spite of the withdrawal of the United States of the Paris Accord. You also made great progress in 2030 agenda and sustainable development goals. Gender parity has been in good hands at the United Nations of Antonio Guterres, and geographical distribution has been also, for example, one good example, you are from the north, you are a man, and your deputy is from the south and is a woman. But on the field of commitments to both prevention of conflicts and conflict resolution, the results haven't been forthcoming. They have been poor, to say the least. How frustrated are you, and what are you going to do in your second year to improve conflict resolutions and prevention of conflict? Because I can give many examples: Yemen, Libya, Syria, Rohingya, Myanmar. I mean, there's so many conflicts that we have failed as a United Nation to do something about.
Well, I'm very frustrated, as you can imagine. First, we have now a new kind of danger that 1 year ago was not perceived. We have a nuclear danger and a serious risk of non-proliferation to be in crisis. The North Korean threat is, of course, something that is extremely worrying. At the same time, we see the Middle East getting more and more complex. We had this recent decision about Jerusalem, and our position is very clear. This should be a matter for final status of Jerusalem. This decision is creating an enormous discontent in the region. But we have everything interlinked. The Syria conflict, the Iraq conflict, the questions between the two sides of the Gulf, between Iran, Saudi Arabia and the other countries, and the Arab countries in general, the problems related to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but also the recent problems in Iraq with the Kurdistan. All these things have been getting together, the potential confrontation between Israel and the Hezbollah, and the growth of the Hezbollah position. All these, so the Middle East became a very dangerous global problem. And of course, I feel very frustrated that there was no progress in relation to the two-state solution for Palestine and Israel. There was no progress in the solution of most of the crises in the region. And then you see most of the other conflicts around the world are not stopping. And we had this horrible tragedy of Myanmar with the terrible persecution of the Rohingya population. 700,000 had to flee Myanmar to Bangladesh. So it's a deep frustration. Now, my belief is that we will only be able to be more effective in prevention and to be more effective in conflict resolution. First of all, we need the Security Council to be more effective, to be united. The divisions of the Security Council are a serious problem to overcome many of the crises we have. But we need countries that are involved in conflicts or supporting those that are involved in conflicts to understand that this situation now became so dangerous to everybody, that the contradictions of interest that might exist are much smaller than the vital interest of everybody to stop this, because these conflicts are becoming interlinked and linked to this new threat of global terrorism, and terrorism that can strike anywhere. And it's not only terrorism of one side. People sometimes speak about radical Islam. No, we see radical Islam, but we see neo-Nazis re-emerging and white supremacists. And we see Buddhist fundamentalists attacking Muslims. We see a radicalization, xenophobia. And it is essential that countries understand that we need to put an end to these endless conflicts.
I would like to move to Yemen. Of course, in the light of the latest attack against the royal the residence of the King Palace by a missile which the Houthis have admitted, and they said this is a new policy of targeting palaces and economic targets in Saudi Arabia like oil fields. This is getting a very dangerous stage. I noticed that in the 4th of November attack, the missiles against King Khalid Airport, the United Nations Secretariat has not issued any communication.
No, we condemned. We condemned all missile attacks against cities are something that needs to be condemned, because we cannot accept in a conflict that civilian targets become military targets. So we did condemn, and we consider, first of all, that providing missiles to any party of the conflict is a violation of the arms embargo, and second, that the use of missiles against cities is totally unacceptable.
Have you reached a conclusion on the Iranian supplies of missiles to the Houthis in Yemen? Because the Americans have, and they showed the evidence. And Nikki Haley said in the Security Council yesterday, everybody is welcome to come and have a look at the evidence. 12 countries have already sent delegations to look at the evidence. Have you sent your people to look at the evidence and to reach a conclusion on these missiles that were made in Iran and they're being used by the Houthis?
There was a commission of inquiry that analyzed in relation to the first missile.
Yes.
And the commission of inquiry could not take an absolutely 100% conclusion, but said that indeed there were in the symbols of the missiles very close connections to what was an Iranian symbol.
Yes.
And as I said, we are in a situation in which the United Nations have imposed an arms embargo. Any violation of that arms embargo cannot be accepted.
When are you going to reach a conclusion? The inquiry is still going on, because the people in the Middle East, especially the citizens of Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia, have the right to self-protection and self-defense according with the Charter of the United Nations. You don't want to see the situation exacerbate and get worse and more fighting in self-defense. When are you going to reach a conclusion concerning these missiles?
Now we have, as I said, the report comes to very close to a 100% insurance certainty.
But Mr. Secretary General, there have been 78 attacks by missiles since
let me conclude.
Since
and we are the first to say that in any solution of the conflict, the security concerns of Saudi Arabia need to be taken into account. I think it is important to have a solution of the conflict, finding for Yemen a government that is inclusive, that is representative of all the sectors of the population, that is democratic, but at the same time that there is disarmament of armed groups, and that the security of the neighbors, and in particular the security of Saudi Arabia, is fully guaranteed. And this is the kind of solution we would like to be working for.
Okay, so do you concur with those who say that the Saudis have the right to self-defense with reference to Article 51 of the Charter?
Every country has the right to self-defense.
Of course.
But of course we are in the middle of a conflict in which it's important to find a solution for the conflict. And that solution needs to take into account the complexity of the Yemeni situation. And we are entirely at the disposal of the parties to the conflict, and we have a special envoy that has been trying to do his best in that regard. We are entirely at the disposal of the parties to the conflict to find, as I said, a solution that needs to be comprehensive. Full respect of the security concerns, namely of Saudi Arabia, but an inclusive political solution for Yemen and the disarmament of the armed groups in the country.
The legitimate government of Yemen has fully cooperated with your special envoy Ismail Wald Sheikh Ahmed. But since May, he needs two parties to talk to. Since May, the Houthis have been refusing to talk to him. Until yesterday, he declared he is going to Sana'a, and they cancelled. Al-Houthi cancelled yesterday his trip to Sana'a to meet with them and talk to them. They refused to talk to him. They have made many statements on that. How can you get the parties to sit around the table with the help of few mediators if one party refuses to speak to this mediator? I mean, many people in the area think Ismail Sheikh Ahmed, by March, when his mandate is finished, will not renew it because he has nobody to talk to from the other side.
Now, he has had different opportunities in the past to talk, and I believe that it will be possible to create conditions to bring the parties to the table. I think that we are now...
You still think that he will bring them?
I think it is possible to do it. I think we are now in a particularly difficult moment. We had recently complex events inside Yemen, which...
you call them complex, others call them criminal. Killing Ali Abdullah Saleh.
I cannot be more in agreement that any murder, any assassination is totally unacceptable. But as I said, there is a complexity of the situation. My hope is that conditions will be created to force the parties to indeed come to a dialogue, and I believe that will happen to the Houthis too.
All right. Let's go back to the missile smuggling. Must and should play a very important part. The United Nations verification and inspection mechanism that has been established and based in Amman. Just now there was a team that went to Saudi Arabia and held talks from UNVIM to strengthen UNVIM and to make it more effective to stop the smuggling that's coming from Iran. The Saudi ambassador was here in November, and he invited the UNVIM to go, and they went. Can you tell us more about this mission of UNVIM, and has it been successful to strengthen UNVIM to the degree to stop the smuggling?
I think that what UNVIM is doing is verifying, or is supposed to do the verification, because for the moment, as you know, most of the commercial traffic has stopped and we have only humanitarian traffic taking place. But what UNVIM is doing is the verification of those ships, but also the same applies to air, that are bringing things to be disembarked, namely in the port of Udeid and in other ports. Now, I'm absolutely sure that the system that is in place for that verification is effective. But there are other ways to do smuggling. No, I mean,
yes.
This is a big region.
That's
you
true.
have a desert. You have large areas of coast. So there are many ways to do smuggling, and we are very keen in making sure that no humanitarian relief to Yemen, and even that is not our business. No commercial relief, no commercial activities that are legal and normal should permit smuggling, and I'm sure that there is no smuggling based on humanitarian relief. But to stop smuggling in Yemen, then it's a much broader mission that has to do with a huge coast. It has to do with the desert, with different borders.
But it has to stop.
It's a complex thing. But it is crucial, in my opinion, to stop any conflict. One of the key elements is to make sure that the arms embargo work perfectly, and we are very keen on supporting the need of an effective arms embargo in relation to the conflict.
In an interview with one American network, you called this war a stupid war. Do you think this was the right word diplomatically to use?
All wars are stupid. Can you give me an example of an intelligent war? I mean, there is always an element of suffering of people that is totally unacceptable.
But people are dying in this war.
That
people are fighting for the legitimacy of their government. People are fighting to restore peace to their country.
What I'm saying is that it is much better to solve problems peacefully. All wars are stupid, in my opinion. We need to do everything to be able to stop them. And I believe that this is the deep will, namely of the countries that have been engaged in this situation, like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates and others. I think their deep will is that a peaceful solution that takes their security concerns into account, that a peaceful solution is found.
You asked the United Nations also, you said in that interview, United States to put pressure on the Emiratis and the Saudis to stop the bombing. But
No. At a certain moment, what we said was that it was important in relation to humanitarian access to have, because of the tragic situation of the population of Yemen, to have humanitarian access reopened. And it's important to say that that has happened, and it's important to say that even with this last attack, there was an affirmation that the humanitarian access would be open. There was a moment in which, indeed, there were problems and difficulties and doubts, and there, I must say, I used all diplomatic instruments that I had at my disposal to protect the dramatic humanitarian situation of the innocent population of the country.
I understand. We'd like to move now to the Middle East peace process. Jerusalem, the vote on Monday, which was defeated by 14-1 by one vote. Many people noticed your absence from that session of the Security Council on Monday. Yet you are speaking tomorrow in the General Assembly. You're not speaking tomorrow.
I am in The Hague.
You're in The Hague. You're leaving.
In these resolutions, the Secretariat has no place. The Secretariat can intervene, invited by the Presidency, to brief the Council, but this was not a situation to brief the Council. This was a resolution that was voted among Member States. So there is no role for the Secretariat. But our position was very clear. If you remember, immediately after President Trump made his statement, I myself made my statement, saying very clearly that any unilateral action that can put at risk the peace process is undesirable, that Jerusalem is a question for the final status, for the negotiation between Palestinians and Israelis, and more. I had the opportunity to say that I still hope to see one day in which the two states, there is no plan B to a two-state solution, the two states will live together, and Jerusalem can be the capital of the two states, of Palestine and Israel.
Tomorrow there's a GA meeting under United for Peace, and there will be a resolution presented with the same principle of the first resolution. However, Nikki Haley, the ambassador of the United States to the United Nations, made it very clear on tweet and in statements that they'll be watching how the countries vote, and they'll be taking names. The President of the United States just made a statement today, say, for all those nations that take our money and then they vote against us at the Security Council or vote against us potentially in the General Assembly. They take hundreds of millions of dollars and even billions of dollars, and then they vote against us, meaning vote for Jerusalem. Well, we are watching those votes. Let them vote against us, and we will save a lot of money. We don't care. What do you say to such statements?
No, it's very simple. When we have matters of this importance, the vote must be strictly based on principles. And for us, in this situation, there is a matter of principle. As I said, and it is the official position of the United Nations, Jerusalem is a matter for the final status. And so, independently of whoever says, I believe countries must vote in accordance to their beliefs and to their principles.
I have few topics and time is catching up. I need quick answers from you. On the Palestinian peace process, are you willing to take the place of the United States? President Abbas called for that they wanted the peace process led by the United Nations instead.
We are ready to do everything both parties accept, because we cannot mediate if both parties do not accept. I am a true believer that we absolutely need a two-state solution and a peace solution for Palestine.
In Syria, the Mistura, the special envoy, has said that the government is refusing to talk directly to the opposition. The government saying until the country is cleared and all the terrorism, we will not talk about the constitution or the election. And the Mistura thinks that will take a long time. Your position, sir?
I think it's absolutely essential that government and opposition talk to each other. And I believe that this should be done without preconditions, that both, they have their different positions, of course, completely different positions, but it's important that they talk to each other without preconditions.
On Libya, after the statements of General Haftar that the Sukhairat agreement, the political agreement for Libya, is no longer, and that he will hold elections.
Now, we believe that the agreement should stand. We believe that the political process should go on, that the dialogue should go on, and as a result of that dialogue, elections will take place at the right moment. But we believe that we should not lose what was gained by the agreement that was established.
On the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia,
the worst thing that could happen is if conflict would erupt again, and if the different components would start shooting each other again, that would be a disaster.
In Saudi Arabia, sir, how do you see the vision of 2030 and the plan to reduce Saudi dependence on oil and the more liberalization policies, especially towards women? How do you view these moves?
No, I think that a country like Saudi Arabia absolutely needs to reform its economy, absolutely needs to create alternatives to oil. It is my deep belief that with the global response to climate change, the role of oil in a few decades will be totally different from what it is today. So countries absolutely need to diversify their economies, and in relation to the measures that were taken to improve the status of women, I was the first to comment them and to praise them, and I hope that the gender, as you know, gender parity is my objective here in the United Nations, and everything that can be done for gender equality everywhere in the world will have my full support.
Mr. Secretary General, we could speak for another hour. There are so many issues, so many topics, but time is short, and we thank you and we wish you a better year next year on all levels, sir. And we thank you for this interview, sir.
Shukran, and we really need a better year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Shukran.
Thank you so much.